issues, the problem is the state, the problem is this and the other. And sometimes the problem is because conceptually we don't spend enough time in this. So I was privileged many years ago. 1998 today is how many years? 20 something. Yeah? You know? Is there anyone who was born in 1998 here? Or just after? Before? Yeah? 1988 to date is how many years? 25. Yeah, so 25 years of doing advocacy work, I think it's not a short time. Okay? Yeah, I think it's not a short time. So you know my age here, I'm not a young man. At least that one is clear. So I've done 25 years or even more of advocacy work, and I've been able to see a lot of things. And also I've been able to do this work both at community level, within government institutions, and even international. So in a sense, what I share here are things that come from the training I did, but also a lot from the experience that I've got. And so when we decided to do this masterclass, we decided that I think it would be good to share it in that way, so that you get both in terms of training, and then you enjoy the 25 years. So instead of living for 25 years like me doing advocacy, you sit down and in 2 hours you have 25 years of experience. How is that? I think that's a better deal. It's a better deal, at least you fast track yourself. And Chris has been telling me that I need to write these things down. So I'm going to also make sure that this comes out as a publication soon, so that it's available for people to use and do other things too. So that was finance. After I finished with finance, I headed to the Uganda National UNGO Forum, where I left Chris. And at the Uganda National UNGO Forum, I was there for 12 years as an executive director. But in a sense, you know, executive directors in NGOs are supposed to be the chief advocacy officers. Because if the executive director doesn't do advocacy, then you are in trouble. Do you realize that? You have a executive director who is interested only in signing checks and sending you to the field, and they don't do any advocacy, at least in Africa. And this is something I saw in terms of the changes. If you look at international organizations, usually for them they have this capacity to do, to hire people. So they can have like a chief advocacy officer in the UK who manages all advocacy officers across the countries where they work. But for local organizations, you will find that the person who has to really drive the advocacy agenda has to be the executive director, because it's a leadership area, it's an issue. So even if there is an officer, still the officer has to be working very closely with the executive director. So this is something that I think for at least local organizations is critical for you to understand what advocacy is. Because that means that in terms of how then you do what you do, it becomes easy. Welcome. Yeah, we shall get to know your name. So it becomes easy for you to see how you can support that as organizations. Because I think for local organizations, you don't have as much luxury. I mean, any of you who comes from a local organization knows, as international organizations in terms of resources. So when you do advocacy, that's why leadership is important, especially the leadership of the institution. So even if you are a junior staff or whatever, you need to be feeding into, leadership that works. But the other thing which I realize about advocacy is that advocacy is one of those areas which is not something you do as one organization and succeed. So if you are running these things as one organization, it's highly likely that you can find yourself in problems. In terms of how effective it is something important to remember. So that's all about the stories, about the history and the context of this. So I hope that what you take out of here are things that you can then situate. If you come from a local organization, you can situate. If you come from home, like one of my sisters, not daughters, maybe sister. All my sisters are older than me, so one of my daughters, she wants to decide where to go next. This is a good chance, you see. Yeah, so these are the opportunities that you can have from doing a course like this. So, you're welcome. Your name? There's so many interesting organized people doing lots of interesting stuff in Uganda, which I know is for me always. People don't realize, but that's a fact. That we have lots of innovations going on in terms of how people are trying. But I also know that that is also a crisis for many organizations, because they start these things, they want to have a good, rounded understanding of some of the concepts that they work with, and probably they don't have people who are actually sharing those kinds of concepts. So you go on the net, you check out things, you download, you don't have a clue what they mean, but you use them in language, in speech, in practice. Some of them go right, some of them go wrong, and then you have an issue. So, what I'm now going to really be sharing is what we mean when we say, what do we mean by advocacy? From the different definitions that you gave here, I pick a number of things which are important to emphasize. And also from what we have defined, or what people have defined advocacy to be over time. I think the first and foremost thing to recognize when you talk about advocacy is a couple of words. One is organized, and the other one is effort. Advocacy initiatives are always organized efforts. They cannot be, you can't do advocacy which is disorganized. If you go on the street and you throw small animals, it's a strategy, but it's not what advocacy is all about. Because I hear some people when they talk about certain things and they say, this advocacy of yours. No, advocacy are organized efforts. And usually we say they are organized efforts by citizens to influence the formulation, implementation of public policies by two things. And actually it's great that you use this. We have more comfortable seats on this side. You can go there. Yeah. Because here my big body may disrupt it. Yeah. But the thing is that it's about organized efforts by citizens to influence certain things. When we come to policy advocacy, we always talk about influencing implementation, formulation of public policies, and the key things that we do in advocacy, and you can turn nearly all advocacy efforts into two things. One is you do what we call pressurizing, and the other one is you do what we call persuading. So in a sense, those are the two big things that you do. And even if you look at the words people used here, calling upon government, pushing, this is pressurizing, this is probably persuading, standing out for the common good, meeting and negotiating. You can see that many of those things, you can cluster them as issues that are about pressurizing and persuading. And, so in a sense, when you do advocacy, and especially policy advocacy, you then have these organized efforts at the top. Then you have your issues around how you persuade or how you pressurize. Now, the way my brain works, you'll find out, at least Chris knows, is I love drawing incomprehensible diagrams, but at some point you'll understand what it is. So, with the PowerPoint, you'll see a lot of these. So here you have your organized efforts. And if you like, those efforts are either to create pressure or to persuade. So if we really were to say what is advocacy in simple words, this is what you would say. And so advocacy embraces, therefore within this, it embraces lots of different activities that you then undertake to gain access to those who are decision makers. Okay? So, because the thing about advocacy is that it presupposes something. One is that you have citizens. That's what it presupposes, but it also presupposes that you have the state, that you have people who have rights and who need to be served by the state. Because as you know, the state is, in a sense, the thing that we put there to serve us together. Instead of you, me, and everybody else building their small road, we put together money and say the state should build a road for us. Instead of you, me doing our small, each one having our small hospital, which may be like witchcraft, because that's what we have with the Sabo. You then agree that let's have a hospital for all of us. So in a sense, what we do is we give the state resources to run things on our behalf. And when the state runs things on our behalf, what do? We are supposed to consume them because they are our things. Now we know that those states sometimes do the right things with our money, or do the right things, they practice the things the way we want them, or sometimes they don't. So that's where advocacy comes in, to say, okay, you the state, who is working on behalf of us, the citizens, how are you managing this thing called the state on our behalf? If you are managing it in a manner that is not comfortable, that's when we decide either put pressure on you or to persuade you. But why do we do this? Because we want these citizens, at the end of the day, to be benefiting more from that state. You see the concept, where it comes from. So that's where we come from when we talk about advocacy. The advocacy is not just about, it's not just about press conferences or walking on the streets, or that is conceptually what it is about. So when you become an advocacy officer, you should be the one managing those organized efforts to pressurize or to persuade the state on behalf of we or for citizens. That's the way we should conceptualize it. So in a sense, advocacy is a tool for citizen participation in state affairs. So when we do advocacy, we are really saying as citizens, we need to participate in how our country, our state runs things. Okay? You all know that you must participate in your, for the state to run, you have to participate. For some things, you have no choice. Even if you like or not, you have to participate. For example, when it comes to paying taxes, do you have a choice? You don't have a choice. All of you came here, I'm sure, used some type of transport. And that transport is taxed. So when you pay taxes, you are supporting the state. But also, there is something, don't you?
What kind of tax does a person that worked here pay?
The one here, the one that was used to tarmac the road.
The shoe had the tax.
The shoe you wore
that you drank before you came.
the milk or the water that you drank at home, the electricity you consumed at home.
I know.
Yes. So you have two things you give the state. You have taxes. What else do you give the state? This one is to pay the facilities. This one
Manage.
is to choose the leader who will manage this on your behalf. So one of the things I'm doing these days is also managing partnerships in the office of the Prime Minister. And you know, when you think about governments, the first thing they do when they get their vote is to look at tax and pay themselves very well from your taxes.
Return on investment.
Because they need a return on their investment. Well, Chris doesn't agree entirely with me. Because you are not investing. You made yourself say, okay, let me stand for a. So it's not an investment, but the thing is that here you choose the leaders, here you give them the resources to run these states. But the idea should be that these leaders are running this state on and for citizens, on behalf of and for citizens. At the end of the day, every citizen should know that they are running the state on their behalf. When they drive the big V8, they are driving it on your behalf. Because you have said, let them be comfortable and manage the state well for me. So when you pay for your president to have a toilet on the road, you are doing that because you say, our leader must talk well. Because he's our leader. Because you have voted for him. Now that's ultimately what it should be in every state. And it's not only here. If you go to the US, the president of the US, when you arrive, they tell you very clearly, the only transport you are going to use is Air Force One in the air and the Beast on road. You know the Beast? What is the Beast? It is the presidential car. And they are manufactured specially for the president and managed by the Secret Service. So everywhere in the world, don't think it's only Museveni who has an inexpensive, states get resources from citizens to manage the state very well so that citizens benefit. So when we do advocacy, we are saying there are certain areas where you are not doing well, where we want you to change. And because the state is a big machinery, we have to always do advocacy well. Otherwise, it becomes very hard to run the state. So what are the preconditions? For civil society, and I have to put this quickly for you because I know most of you come from civil society. For civil society, it's important to note that to do advocacy well, there must be certain preconditions. There must be certain things that you do well, that you have, which you have, not do well, that you have. The first thing is that for a civil society organization to do advocacy efficiently, as I say, it's always good to do it in coalitions or in big groups. Why is it so? It's because, what does Vijana Corps work on? What are your areas of work?
We are working on young people and
Okay.
we are zeroing down to some 3 areas of implementation, undertaking, organizing,
What?
Creative organizing.
So what do you want at the end of the day?
We are building a movement of young people.
Okay.
Change agency. About 10,000
To do what?
to influence decision making in
Yes.
this way. Yeah.
So Vijana Corps says the Vijanas in Uganda, and if you are in Vijana, please, you belong to Vijana Corps. We are going to also do a Zay Corps. So watch out, watch this space when we come up. Will you join our Zay Corps? So Vijana Corps says we are building a movement of young people because we think that these young people should influence how things are done by the state. So they go around and think about that. But in doing that, that means that you cannot build movements of young people with only the 10 staff in your organization or the 20. You have to look at the young people across the country and probably in other organizations. So your advocacy becomes effective if it is in coalitions, if it is in organized networks. So that's why I'm saying that the preconditions for you as civil society, one is advocacy to work, you must have internal democracy. I know recently they did an NGO exhibition and they bashed us, and Ssewakiryanga Richard was there, that I don't know, I did work with someone, but anyway, the thing is, those things are done because of the failure of our own internal democracy. So the way to actually succeed in a good advocacy campaign is to have internal democracy. What does internal democracy mean? It just means being able to manage processes in a manner where each of the partners are appreciated, are listened to, and every voice counts. You know that you have sometimes organizations where some people feel voiceless. Yes. So make sure that you don't. At least for me, when I left NGO Forum, they were not feeling voiceless. That's why please can come and attend the session with me. But the thing is that some organizations, when the ED leaves, you say, poof, poof. This is it. So that is not good, but in terms of democracy, why it is important for advocacy is because you see with advocacy, like it or not, you will have different opinions. Different people will have different opinions about the same issue. If I asked you here, there is an issue that is being run. Who comes from a women's organization here? Which one?
Forward for women.
Hey, you are forwarded and she's forwarded. So Patricia is my good friend. I hope you all know that. Okay, good. Does she talk about me? But if you go to UWONET, I had somebody from UWONET. UWONET, you do work with women, okay? And one of the big things now is teenage pregnancy. If we asked here in this room, how do we eradicate teenage pregnancy in Uganda? How many answers can we get? Very many. Some people think we should castrate men. Others think we, of course, Matembe didn't say that. If you read her book, I have read her book. Actually, recently I read it. She never said it, but you know, people take many things. But some people think that, other people think no. We should keep girls in school. Other people say, well, we should keep boys away from girls. So there are hundreds of things. So to reconcile those positions into one advocacy agenda means that you must have internal democracy. So that's the thing. The other thing is you must be willing to interact with government. You see, yeah, because you see, for me, I can tell you there are people we've worked with, and they have asked me, but Richard, what are you doing talking to this regime? This regime should just leave, and then we engage. So, if you are not willing to engage with the government that is there, it's very hard to do advocacy. So that's a precondition. Because you see, the thing is that at the end of the day, they are the decision makers who are there. So you may like them, you may not like them, but if you're not willing to interact, you can't do advocacy. The other one is you must be willing to build and consolidate alliances. I can tell you that from my many years of running a platform organization, one of the biggest challenges that civil society organizations face, not only in Uganda but everywhere, even globally, is this: building alliances. Why? Because the money we use for our work is always in competition. Isn't that true? EU puts up a proposal. It calls us. It wants to fund 4 people. And we put in 90 applications. All of us. So what does that mean? It means that what he writes and what I write, I have to hide mine so that it goes through. But sometimes, unfortunately, when it goes through, I have to work with him. And then he says, you went through, I didn't go through. You are bringing me in your coalition. Nonsense. You see? So what happens? It becomes hard to build alliances. So it is a dicey area for all of us. But sometimes it means that, for example, the big boys and the big girls, like the forwarders who are the big girls, and the UWONETs who are the big girls, they should make sure that they are accommodating, inclusive. And even the big young people like Vijana, to make sure that those ones who can't talk properly like Vijana talks, can be able to feel comfortable. One of the things I used to say at NGO Forum is we should never be in competition with any other NGO. Meaning that when we come together, if so and so say, no, that one I want to lead, and they are members of the NGO Forum, you, the forum, should actually step aside and let them lead. I always told my colleagues there that if we go to the field, our logo should never appear alone, where you have NGO Forum in Kapiela Bong, and its logo is alone. No, there is a local organization there that you work with. Its logo should be on the side with yours. Why is that? Because you must build alliances to build advocacy. And I know I have too many stories, so I'll go faster, please. When you see me going too slow, please remind me. The other thing is you must have a long-term vision for societal transformation. I know all of you have, the longest is a 5-year program. That's the longest, isn't it?
Yes.
Any organization here that has money for a 10-year program? 10, 7, 5. Where you have a 5-year program. Is it the Ford Foundation?
No, Vijana Corps.
No, I'm saying who is funding it?
It's a Ford, yeah.
Ford Foundation.
And Ned.
And then, I know Priest has a 5-year program. Did you say? You have a 5-year program?
Yes, by Womankind.
Womankind. Okay? And you can actually map the international donors who fund 5-year programs. They are not many. Who has 3? Where you have a 3-year program. Yeah, 3 years. 2?
We also have
2. And 1? You have some 1s. Near everybody has 1. There are even those who have 6 months. Yeah? And of course, many of us have none. Yeah, there are organizations that have none. It's not because they don't know what they are doing, but because nobody has looked at them. So, but that's the thing. If you don't have a long-term societal vision, a vision for, that's what I used to tell young people. You on it, not you are on it or who on it? You on it. You say. That's what I used to tell young people when I was saying, look guys, don't be here and think that your problem is this one. If you have an issue with 7, don't focus on an 80-year, 70-year-old man when you are a 25-year-old boy or girl. Why? Because your world and theirs are different. In 20 years, if you add 20 years to Ssewakiryanga, you know how old I will be? I will be 75. Actually, I'll be a bit more than 75. So if you are 25, should you really be worrying the way I'm worrying? No. But the problem in Uganda is sometimes you do advocacy as with this very narrow, short-term societal vision. So don't feel like you must solve every problem in your lifetime. No. Because every lifetime there will be a new problem. But that's why we say societal vision. But the other thing, lastly, is you must have a clear reason of why you are coming together. Those of you who remember who was part of Black Monday from Greece. You remember Black Monday. That when we started Black Monday, after all the advocacy we had done on anti-corruption, it was clear that we must have a simple, very simple to understand mission. What do we want? We want to reject corruption. We want to shun the corrupt. That's it. So we are not. So everything should be. The mission for why you are doing an advocacy should be clear, and that's how clear it should be. And yes, we had some successes and probably some failures, but at least we were always clear. When you looked at the back of the Black Monday page, there were 1, 2, 3 actions we are calling people. Why? Because the mission was clear. But that's one campaign. But any campaign you do, always make sure that why you are coming together is clear. So, another thing, we have talked about what you should have internally. Let me say something about what you should have externally. And this is where people say, okay, now Richard, you are shooting yourself in the foot. One is that there must be enabling conditions. You see, the other thing about advocacy is the enabling conditions are always an issue. One of the enabling conditions for advocacy is openness to democracy. Okay? People who look at Uganda these days say, well, are we really open for democracy? Some parts are, some parts are not. But it's a precondition. Because if there is nobody willing to talk, you can't do it. For example, as we speak right now, you cannot do advocacy in Sudan. Can you? Because the state is collapsed. There is war. So openness to democracy is an enabling condition, meaning that you must have, parliament is working, local governments are engaging, government is ready to listen to people, because those are the things that make advocacy work. But the other thing, there has to be socio-economic and cultural, not equity that everybody should be equal, but there has to be the feeling that what we are dealing with is we don't think that any of us is more important than the other. At least in the face of the law. That's why we use the word equity, not equality. That it has to be there. The other thing is, advocacy works well if you have decentralization. Why do we say decentralization here? Is that when you know that there are different parts of the state that are managing different decision-making issues. Okay? But also the media has to be a bit democratized. When you have a democratized media, that is also very helpful in advocacy, especially the access to the media. And I think that is there in Uganda. Probably some of it is over-democratized. We sometimes feel, oh my God, this media, this is everywhere on us. You go here, there, you go there. These days you can't even have a good dance outside. When we used to start, there were not too many cameras, so we could go to and dance like, and then nobody covers. But these days they see you here, they say, oh. So anyway, that's the thing. But also you must have a culture of transparency and accountability. Which is good, because you see, while we have our crises in Uganda, but at least we know certain things. Yeah? We can debate how much Museveni spends, because we have the information. But in other countries, you don't know even how much is spent by a government. So these are the things that are important. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you can take the back seat there. He's a very important man, that's why I'm giving him a back seat. Yes, the important men don't sit in front seats. You know that? They sit in the back seat. In the car, have you ever seen the minister sitting in the co-driver seat? But you are welcome. We will give those who didn't introduce themselves a chance to introduce when we do a short break. Okay? So those are the preconditions, the enabling conditions of advocacy. Openness to democracy, social and economic and cultural equity, decentralized system, democratization of media, transparency, and many others. But I want to say that there are certain elements that have to be there, because if they are not there, then you can't do advocacy at all. So, therefore, what are the requirements? What is required of a CSO to do advocacy? I haven't actually started telling you how to do advocacy. I'm just setting up the context. Okay? So, the basic requirements for doing advocacy is a number of things, and we shall talk about in detail when we go into the steps of doing advocacy. Number one, you must have knowledge of how state institutions work and function. The biggest crisis in this country is exactly that. That sometimes you hire an advocacy officer and you give them a title and they don't know even when Parliament sits. or you do a campaign and I will give you examples later of where people will do campaigns and you arrive to do a campaign on budgeting when the budgeting has just been passed. But the thing around how state institutions function, because if you don't know how state institutions function internally, then you don't know how to influence them. People take these things for granted. For example, when we say parliament, do you know what is the difference between a standing committee and a sessional committee of parliament? Do you know what they call, how the process of getting a law in place? You know that what is a first reading, what is a second reading, what is laying something on the floor of parliament? Have you heard of those words? Not yet. You have. Yeah, but the thing is, I'm not saying criticizing everybody. I'm just saying that when you are doing advocacy, these are the kinds of things you can't run away from. Knowing how state, you can pass here. The facilitator is okay with people passing in front of him. And I'm not like the judge. The judge, you have to go this behind you, and my team, you can't show them your back. Okay? The other thing is, in advocacy, to do efficient advocacy, you must know how to manage information. What does managing information mean? Managing information is many things. It means how you manage what you gather, but how you manage also what you share. I know, Chris, you know how many crises we went through because of irresponsible sharing of information. Somebody comes to your planning meeting, they photograph 2 or 3 flip charts and take them to ISO and say these guys are planning against government. But they have taken the flip charts out of context. You see the point? Because they want to gain some little favor here and there. And there are many of these kinds of things. There is, in terms of managing information, how I can give thousands of examples. But advocacy for CSOs, you also must make sure that it has educational opportunities. If you are doing, for example, advocacy on something like teenage pregnancy, it does, you may think that you know what it means, but do some research, bring experts to explain, help you to understand. Because when they do that, then you, the person doing advocacy, you are a better person in terms of how you engage. But if there is no education, so we always tell people that when you are planning your advocacy activities, don't plan it and do it without any way of saying what is the education opportunity for the people doing advocacy themselves. That's part of doing good advocacy. If you come out and you are more aware and you articulate things better, that in itself is impact. You can stand in a community and explain the law in something you were working on advocacy. Then it's better than, for example, when you do advocacy and then you finish and you say, but I don't know what those things were all about. The ED who was telling us to go for the workshops. You have heard those kind of stories. So that's the thing around advocacy. Clear agreements within the groups. It's very important. I hope you know how important it is to have solidarity. Maybe some of you don't, because some organizations, maybe people like Chris who come from networks and Forward Day and UNNGO, you are the people who know why this is important. Many organizations and advocacy initiatives collapse because of agreement within the group. Some people say we must go on the street. That is the only way we are doing advocacy. If they don't see us on the street, then we are doing nothing. And other people say, no. Let's present a petition. And others say, no. How do we? So, if you have no clear agreement about how to do the advocacy in group, that creates a problem. The other thing is understanding the political context. Ladies and gentlemen, many people sometimes do advocacy in countries they don't understand. Don't do that. If you are a Ugandan, understand Uganda. What does that mean? It means that you must understand the political context. Which year are we in now? 2023. So 2023 is going to be different from 2026.
25.
And 25. Okay? So if you are doing advocacy, you have to know that. But also just understanding the dynamics. Okay? Don't go and do advocacy on a day when you know that the issues. Don't start an advocacy initiative when there is negativity around town. When they bomb town and they say, oh, let's go and march against teenage pregnancy. I mean, that means you haven't read the times.
Yeah, sure.
For COVID,
But, yeah.
like COVID now.
Yeah. Right?
You tell people COVID, you put on masks, I think
Yes.
the context is different.
It is different. So the thing is that to understand the political context, it does not make you political. You know, there are these people we hire in NGOs and they say, oh, you know me, I'm unpolitical. I'm not political. Please, every one of you is political. So that's why you have to understand the political context. You don't understand it because you are going to stand for elections, no. But know what are the political issues in the country that may affect your advocacy initiative. And then, availability of human and economic resources. Good advocacy means that you must find resources to do it. Both human, but also economic. Yeah. The Uganda sat innocent tafumita chindazi. Have you heard of that? Yeah. Somebody, it has many meanings, but let me stick to the literal meaning. The literal meaning is if you have no money, you can't go around shopping for donuts.
You can't break it.
Okay,
Because
so
those manders is used to use wires.
Yes, to print it. Oh, you live in that area.
Yeah.
I went to a Vijana. No, it's my era. It is my era where we used to have wires.
That's where the slogan came from.
So Now that somebody knows where the slogan comes from. But the thing is, what we are saying is you must mobilize resources. Okay? Find resources, find partners who have some money, tell them come in. You didn't prepare them. It doesn't work like that. Okay? So, the other thing is, as I move into the steps, because there are several steps that you need to go through. But let me say that for effective advocacy and having a good structured advocacy strategy, you must have 4 questions that you ask yourself. And those 4 questions have 8 steps. And what I'm going to try and do this morning, which is going to be a marathon, but hopefully we shall manage the marathon, is to give you the 8 steps of doing advocacy. But also to introduce to you the 4 questions. So what are the 4 questions? The 4 questions in advocacy, when you say we want to have an organized effort for pressurizing or persuading the state to ensure that citizens benefit, I want to take you back to this because this is like the theory of change of advocacy. Then you have to ask 4 questions. First question is, what do we as a coalition, as an alliance, as an organization, what do we want? That's the first question. Second question is, who has the decision-making power? Ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand that advocacy is about body and blood. We don't do advocacy on walls. They are advocate for this wall to fall down. No, those ones you can do in church. These people who move mountains. Don't do that. If you are in a state, you on advocacy, don't do advocacy on institutions and you say, you see the parliament. Or you do advocacy from where my friend comes from. You see the commission. No. Advocacy, you must know this. Who has the decision-making power? Now, sometimes it is a person, sometimes they are persons. But at the end of the day, ultimately, everything is decided by people. Okay, right now we are enjoying all this craze of AI, okay, artificial intelligence. Oh, you know, I put in and then it tells me this. It can tell you things, but at the end of the day, even if it is YouTube, it is managed by a person. It is run by people who can draw out certain things and put in certain things. That's the same with the state. So this is an important question. Then the next question you ask in advocacy is, what do we need to do to convince the targeted decision maker? Okay? That's an important question because what you need to do to convince Richard is not the same thing that you need to do to convince, whose other name do I remember? Morris. You see? There are different strategies that you need to undertake if you are meeting different types of decision makers. Okay? It seems obvious, but sometimes we forget it. And we say everybody should respond to a press statement. No. For some people, what you put in this press, I look at it and say, thank you for writing. It doesn't really concern me. But when you talk to me directly, then I can say something. But for others, they are always looking out and say, hey, what did they write about me? You know, when you go to these government offices, do you realize that these days every minister has a TV in their office? You know why? Has anybody thought about why? Because they must know what the media is out there channeling. They can't sit there and wait for the news. They have to keep
Who is saying what?
what is saying, what is being said, what is trending, who is saying what. Why? Because these days, governance has changed. We are so much aware. When you go to all these WhatsApp groups, thousands of WhatsApp groups with all leaders signing up here. Why? Because people know. So if you are doing advocacy, targeting the decision maker is important so that you choose the right target and the right mechanism for targeting. But lastly, is also to know this. How will we know if our strategy is working? You see, it's important to always know if things are working. Is that true? Yeah. If you don't know if things are working, that in itself can create a crisis